So most people who are on the call have been on several ones so far, and normally I have a big long list of the future middle leader forums, but Fran's is the last one before the summer, so my list is looking a little bit limited, but those people who have been on previous sessions, you'll have heard me talk about our leadership training program. We're starting for middle leaders in September. I have the web page for it is in draft. I will get it live hopefully today or tomorrow morning, and because you've attended these sessions, you'll get an email inviting you to attend. There's only 15 places for all 4 sessions, and it's all looking at for how middle leaders can develop skills or enhance their existing skills about how to be a strong leader in the uncertain times that we've got going on at the moment. Fran is going to be leading the session, so if you enjoy her session today, then it's kind of a hint as to what's going to come up in the future, though I know quite a lot of you know her already, and wherever I go, people go, oh my God, Fran's amazing. So Fran, do you want to tell us a little bit
again?
And you're back again. Like, second time in this series, I think.
I think I was the first. I have a feeling, and the last then.
You were the first and the last, yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. God, I didn't realise that. Can you tell us a little bit about the development programme that we're going to be running?
Sure. So I think the idea is that it's a whole programme in itself, and I'm hoping that what you'll get out of it is the ability to strengthen professional relationships, sometimes the more tricky ones, but with more ease. And also to get the best out of your team, to have everybody focused on your common goals and motivated and engaged, and also to be kind of developing a culture amongst the team which is cooperative and solution focused. And then there's some personal skills along the way, developing your resilience, listening skills, which you know, I always think I'm a good listener, and yet when I do the listening exercises, it shows me there's always room for improvement. And every time I do invest in improving those skills, I definitely see the benefit. So it's kind of a bit of a mixed bag, but hopefully there'll be something for everybody. And I think it's appropriate for, is it just aimed at middle leaders?
Yeah, basically, but middle leaders in the loosest sense. So you don't have to actually line manage someone, but if you have, you know, the equivalent of a strategic level of management of of projects, for example. So that kind of loose sense of middle management. You're not, you know, on the board or the CEO, but you do have authority and responsibility within your organization. There's only going to be 15 places available for all 4 sessions, and it's completely for free. You do have to sign an agreement to say that if you miss a session for reasons other than, you know, you had a car accident on the way, that you will have to kind of pay towards the sessions, but it's free if you attend all 4 sessions. And there's optional tasks that you can do at the end of each of the sessions if you want to, but that's up to you and how much time you've got. And there'll also be a certificate that you can then use to put in your CV or for future job hunts or whatever it might be. Not that I'm suggesting you're looking to move on from your jobs, but it will happen eventually.
And I think, Karen, one more thing, if you don't mind me saying, is that as I've been preparing for some of these webinars and webinars I've done for other organisations, I think my key aim is that I can maybe share learnings that took me a very long time to learn, and I wish I'd had somebody whose brain I could pick or whose experience I could pick, but at the time there weren't many people around. So my aim is always to try and impart and explore learnings so that people don't have to do it the long way.
Yeah. That basically is a summary of why we want to do this program. So I'll email you something out about that, hopefully in the next few days. I know I said that last week too, but I was on leave, so I let things slip. So I'm going to turn over to Fran, who is going to be looking at diversifying funding streams, which I think we can all agree is rather essential and rather challenging at the moment. Because we've only got a small group, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question at any point. If you'd prefer to put it in the chat box, I'll do the interrupting if you're more comfortable with that. If you want to hold on to your questions till the end, that's also good as well. Whatever works for you. Very chilled today. On that lovely note, I'm going to hand over to wonderful Fran. Enjoy your session.
Very much. It's very kind of you, wonderful Karen. And for those of you who I haven't had the pleasure to meet yet, Yes, I'm Fran, and until earlier this year, I was the CEO of Youth Concern in Aylesbury, and I was there for 13 years, which is longer than a life sentence, isn't it? And then I left, brilliant timing at the end of Feb, and set up a business called Heart-Centered Leaders. And I've been developing my leadership coaching work, which I had been doing on the side, and charity consultancy work, which I had also been doing a little bit on the side. So I'm fortunate to be working with a lovely, diverse group of charities at the moment. And yes, this is one of my favourite topics, actually. It does make me feel a little bit sad, diversifying funding streams, but only because when I finally discovered what all the fuss was about, you know, great things started happening within our charity. And so I'm sure, you know, many of you are experienced fundraisers or senior managers who have been in those positions for many years, and I'm sure most of you will have started upon this journey, but I hope that somewhere in the next hour you might glean one or two useful tidbits. So just to start with, I thought it might be nice if everybody could introduce themselves, please, with your name, your role, and your organisation. And then for any of you that got a pen, you might want to just jot these 4 little things down, if your memory is anything like mine. It would be great if you could share one guilty pleasure that you indulged in during lockdown, a key challenge you faced, a quality of yours that came in handy over the last few months, and a new skill you learnt. So I'll repeat those 4. The first one was a guilty pleasure. Second, a key challenge, a quality of yours that's come to the fore, and a new skill that you've learnt. And so I'll kick it off. So yes, I'm Fran. I'm the founding director of Heart-Centered Leaders, and my guilty pleasure was that I ate far too much of everything bad for me, and I drank too much, and found out I'd put on tons of weight, which I'm now trying to get rid of. I hope some of you at least can resonate with me. Karen's nodding her head. A key challenge that I faced was setting up a new business, which I had planned would be completely face-to-face. And now, you know, I had very, very stunted technological skills. So that was my challenge. A quality of mine that came in handy, I think there were 2. One is resourcefulness and the other is resilience. And lastly, a new skill. I'm sorry to admit that I really didn't even know how to use Zoom, and even that scared me. So I have mastered how to use Zoom, not as advanced level as Karen has, but at least I can do the basics. So over to you guys.
Shall I kick off? I'm Dorothy.
Lovely.
So I'm
Hello,
Dorothy. I worked at Media Defense as development director. Media Defense is a small international NGO based in London. And I joined Media Defense in January this year, so basically 2 months before COVID. Guilty pleasure. So I have actually stopped using the alarm when waking up in the morning, which is so much of a guilty pleasure. Key challenge was to work full-time, but also homeschool 2 children during the pandemic, on top of obviously starting a new job in a completely new type of industry. Quality that came in handy, I guess, was that I'm a good listener, which is quite handy when you have Zoom calls, etc., where you don't realize too much on body language. You really have to listen 100% to make sure you get the most out of those Zoom calls. And new skill, like you, Fran, I feel like I've mastered Zoom and Microsoft Teams and GT and all these kind of platforms that we have to become very comfortable with. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Who's next?
I'm quite happy. I'm Sarah, and my connection's quite unstable, so you might lose me. I'm the fundraising manager at Puzzle Centre Trust Limited, which is an organisation which works and supports children and families with autism. My guilty pleasure during lockdown is far too much chocolate and crisps. So like most of us, I have put on a few pounds. My key challenge has actually, I've only been in the role 18 months. My key challenge has actually been working from home on my own. I have found that quite isolating. And my biggest quality, I think I am, like the previous person, Teresa, I think I'm quite good at listening and just absorbing, listening to other people's problems actually. And greatest challenge has been technology such as Zoom and living in a small house with poor Wi-Fi and having the whole family at home all using the Wi-Fi. Everything's good.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'm happy to go next if you want. So I'm Debbie Denyer, and I work for a charity called Careers Springboard. I was an executive committee member, and I should probably get kicked off this call now because I've just become the chair of trustees this week. So, but yeah, so it's run entirely by volunteers. And my guilty pleasure has been doing lots of biscuit and cake making with the kids and eating them all. My key challenge has also been homeschooling. I've got ultimate respect for teachers now. Yeah. And then quality has been my research and organisation skills really, trying to find places that I can get food from without having to go to supermarkets and things. So lots of research to find everything we need, and lots of buying in bulk as well. And then the skill that I've learned, I did a NLP practitioner course.
Great.
So that's the skill that I've learned as well.
Fantastic. Who's next?
Hi, I'll go next. Hi everyone, I'm Melinda and I manage Aylesbury Youth Action, who specialise in youth volunteering for ages 14 to 24. I guess some of mine are quite linked really. My new skill is baking, but not necessarily by my decision. My daughter's quite into it, and she's kind of trying to school me, oddly enough, in it. And it's always good to try and distract her from school work as much as actually getting it done. Which brings me to the key challenge, of course, is actually juggling everything with schooling and excuse me, getting everything done. I suppose my guilty pleasure is painting and food. So it's kind of a bit of both. And I guess my quality would be I'm quite adaptive and inventive with new bits and pieces. So
great. Thank you. Is there anybody else left?
We have Diane.
Hi, yeah, I'll go. Hi, I'm Diane. Diane Dancy-Brink. I have recently launched a CIC called Menopause Support. It pretty much does what it says on the tin. During lockdown, my guilty pleasure has definitely been chocolate, which needs to stop. My challenge has been launching a CIC, probably at one of the worst periods that I could ever have thought to do it. Yeah. Also, while trying to finish writing a book. My quality has been tenacity, and the skill, like everybody else, has been getting used to things like Zoom.
Excellent. Sounds like somebody's decided to start chopping wood outside my window. Is it disturbing the sound quality or not?
It's okay, don't worry.
Okay.
I don't know who my PC is. Who are you? Would you like to share? My PC is your label says my PC. I don't know who you are.
Ah.
You don't have to share if you don't want to share, not a problem.
There we go. Shall I continue?
Yes, please do. Please do.
Thank you for sharing, everybody. It seems like Cadbury's were one of the winners out of this pandemic. But yes, so I'm going to start just with a little bit of context for why we've chosen to focus on diversifying funding streams. And I know I, for one, over the last few months have seen numerous worrying headlines, which I know a lot of you guys will have been experiencing or worrying about yourselves. So one of those said 2 in 5 charities warn they have 6 months to survive before they run out of money unless they receive urgent funds. Another one said charities set to lose £4 billion over, that was 3 months, due to COVID-19 pandemic, in particular events. And according to the Institute of Fundraising, 30% of people said they would stop or reduce support for an existing charity if they thought it was not directly helping those affected by coronavirus. And then, of course, we've seen the shift from many trust and grant funders away from their core work that they've been supporting to target their funds only to charities who are directly supporting beneficiaries directly affected by COVID. So I'm certain, like Karen said, that for all of you, how you're going to fund your vital services over the coming year and beyond has been certainly high up on the list of priorities, and that I am sure those of you who have trustee boards will have been exploring these questions at length. So if you've not started diversifying, then now is most definitely the time to get a wriggle on. And if you've been already starting upon this rewarding journey, then congratulations, but it's likely that you're going to need to step up your game even more over the coming year. So you might be reasonably asking yourselves, what makes me qualified to talk to you, as I have absolutely no fundraising qualifications, 0. But I do have experience on my side. And as I said, up until the end of Feb this year, I was a fundraising CEO of Youth Concern in Aylesbury. And for the past 13 years, the fundraising team has been me. So if I rewind 13 years, then I was absolutely overjoyed to land the role of CEO. And overnight, I was catapulted into a position of being entirely responsible for all the fundraising for the charity, having absolutely no previous experience of raising funds. And in fact, a funny little story I remember is that when I phoned up my best friend, who I met when we were volunteering, actually, when we were about 20 for underprivileged children, that's what they were called in those days, she said to me, "Oh, don't worry about it." She said, "You're always the one that was able to blag free cinema tickets for the kids." It didn't necessarily give me a lot of confidence, but blagging definitely has been one of the skills that's come in handy, but I wouldn't suggest that you rely purely on that. So overnight, as I said, that was my responsibility, and I knew that I had to make it my mission to learn fast how to be a fundraiser. And over the years, I was just working it out the other day, actually, I think that I've managed to raise about 3 million, including over the last couple of years, 1 million, when we set ourselves a really ambitious target to set up a new youth homeless supported accommodation project. So although I would not call myself an expert, I just would like to share with you some of the tricks of the trade that I learned along the way. And as I said at the start, some of these took me a really long time. So if I can help you shortcut, then all the better. And in particular, the key role that diversifying funding streams played in building both a financially sustainable charity and one that could make more of a lasting impact on the lives of an increasing number of vulnerable and disadvantaged young people every year. And let's not forget the core reason for fundraising. For me, fundraising is purely to enable you to deliver your excellent services to your beneficiaries. But before we get started for real, I'd like to ask you 3 questions. First of all, what is the primary means of raising funds at your charity? I think, Karen, you're going to be putting up these questions, aren't you? So guys, you don't have to remember them. That's right, isn't it, Karen? Yay. Yep. So the first question is, Karen, that would be fantastic. What is the primary means of raising funds at your organisation? And then the second question is, how reliant are you on this source of income? So for example, when I started out, we were 100% reliant on grants, for example. If you could just take a minute to let us know, that would be wonderful. Is it working, Karen?
It's working perfectly. I can see people have come in, so 4 people so far, 5 people have voted so far.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And lastly, I don't know if you need a little bit more time.
Yeah,
lastly,
Fran, if you can just give a second until we can see the results,
sure.
That'll be easier, I think.
Oh yes, sure. Thank you very much.
So I think probably everybody has voted by now, so I'm going to end the poll so you can see the results.
Okay.
And here are the results, Fran.
Thank you.
So grants appear to be the vast majority of people are funded that way. Some with contracts and others, whatever that means, and very reliant on grants, it would appear, as the summary of that one.
Okay. So yes, I can others, and I wonder what the others are, but maybe if you guys could put that in the chat box, I'd just be interested to know what the other is. The only others I could think of at the time, which we didn't include, were trading and social enterprise, which is, you know, a form of trading, but I'd be interested to know what those others are. Thank you. And so lastly, third question, CIC, of course. Yeah. Yes, Diane. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. So last question is, what do you think what I think are the 2 main benefits of diversification of funding streams are?
So do feel free to mute yourself.
Are they putting notes in the chat?
No, you can either put it in the chat, or if you just want to unmute yourself and share, then do.
Oh yeah, if you'd like to unmute.
Oh, Fran, you're breaking up.
Let me know your thoughts. That would be fab.
Can you repeat the question, Fran, please? Sorry.
Benefits of diversification. Okay. What do you think that the 2 main benefits of diversifying your funding are? I'll give you a clue, actually. The first one is to minimise something. Yes, you're on the right track there. And the second one is to maximise something. So Melinda says, not putting all your eggs in one basket. Yes, absolutely. Minimise risk. Yes, that's what I've written down here. And maximise, any ideas? What do we want to maximise? Yes, impact, that's true. It is impact. So what I've written down is opportunity. I think by maximising your opportunity of funding, you can then maximise your impact. Yes, I'd agree. Okay, so I think you guys would agree that severe budget cuts over the past decade, plus recession, mental factors driving voluntary sector organisations to rethink their funding strategies. Many charities, especially the small ones, but also the large ones, realise that now is the time to become less reliant on traditional sources of income in response to changing circumstances. And resilience and resourcefulness are key skills which are being required to not only survive but thrive in this COVID and post-COVID climate. So with increased competition for grants and donations, many organisations are becoming so much more innovative in rethinking their financial models and exploring alternative options. For example, as one of you mentioned, trading, a CIC perhaps, or via social enterprise arm, as well as crowdfunders, Facebook fundraisers, and other virtual. There are two main motivators to start diversifying if you haven't yet, or if you have, then putting more time and resources into diversification. And they are, to recap, minimizing risk and maximizing your opportunities. So if we start with looking at the risk reason, let's say, for example, you've been successful with securing a multi-year national grant that will cover 50% of your core funds for the next 3 years. Now, that was a situation I was fortunate enough to be in 3 years ago at Youth Concern, after we'd been successful with getting a big lottery grant. And yes, this was great cause for celebration. But at the same time, there was a level of concern, or at least caution, on the part of the trustees, in particular the treasurer. And he'd keep on asking me questions like, what happens if your project is not as successful as you had anticipated? What if you're not able to deliver the outcomes that you've promised? These were both prudent and very important questions to pose, and they needed us giving them some serious consideration. It's said that my internet connection is unstable. Can you still hear me okay?
We can do, it's a little bit shaky every now and again.
Okay. Let me know if it is difficult. So, of course, if the project had in fact started under delivering, then, you know, if you've built up your relationships with your grants manager, you can flag up these initial problems and difficulties. For example, you know, COVID, an unforeseen crisis completely out of our control, has impacted on many charities' abilities to deliver face-to-face work with their beneficiaries. Now, Wickham Youth Action, who I've been working with over the past few months, are a great example of a local charity who've managed to move some of their services online. But in doing so, certainly at the outset, their numbers of clients that they were working with dropped drastically. And fortunately, many funders are being flexible and supportive as long as they can see that there was a valid reason for the reduction in delivery, and also that the charity has been trying to adapt its services to fit changing need. But if we set Corona aside for a minute and look at the situation where perhaps you've just over-anticipated or over-promised your forecasted outcomes and you've not delivered, then you might be in the situation where you end up having to return some of that money from year one. And the funder may even withdraw their promise of funding. You'll often see in the small print, certainly of the larger funders, they retain the right to stop the funding. And then that's quite a devastating outcome. Another risk to highlight is that when you're given a large amount of funding, like we were, which will improve your financial stability and sustainability, this can lead to some reduced focus or even complacency in terms of your current fundraising activities. Perhaps you decrease the number of funding applications you're submitting, for example. You might believe that you're okay for a while and that you can focus on other important areas of the charity, such as quality service delivery or starting up a new project to respond to growing beneficiary need. But in doing so, when the large grant term comes to an end, you may well have failed to nurture the grant funder and prospective donor relationships. And this could well mean that it's going to be more difficult to source new funding than it had been prior to the large grant, when there would have been a more proactive response and approach to fundraising. So these risks are compelling reasons to focus on diversifying your funding streams, rather than, as Melinda said, metaphorically putting all your eggs in one basket. Does that make sense? If any of you have got questions as we go along, please do feel free to put them in the chat. Just wait a minute to see if anybody's got any questions, Karen, before I lunge forward.
I think we're good.
Okay, nothing coming up at the moment? No. So then let's explore the second motivator, which is maximising the opportunity. And this is the second reason for diversifying your funding streams, in my view. So at the start of my fundraising journey, the first thing I did was to look at what the charity had done before and how it had raised its funds up till then. As I said, I was not a fundraising professional, so I thought, why reinvent the wheel? This charity has managed to raise funds up to now from grant funding, so that's what I'll continue to focus on. I also realised that I did have the basic skills to start the bid writing. It would have been no good if I was poor at writing, or I found it difficult to put a compelling case for support together, or I had no skills in researching prospects, but I did have those things. So I thought it was worth me giving it a go. But just because the charity had always raised its funds from grants and trusts didn't necessarily mean that that was the best way or the only way that we should have been raising income moving forward. And by me taking this quite blinkered approach, I was definitely missing out on a trick or two. I certainly hadn't considered the benefits of diversification in those early years. And knowing what I know now, with the benefit of hindsight, I can see that I should have been exploring corporate and individual donors, as well as community fundraising at the very least. So I was missing out on the opportunities to harness, importantly, the local community support for a local charity. So why don't you just take a minute now to ask yourselves the same question? You can share if you wish in the chat. What opportunities do you think that you are currently missing out on? I'll just give you a minute to have a think about that. What opportunities do you think you're currently missing out on by focusing almost exclusively on one stream of income? Perhaps you're mulling that over, which is fine. So once you've decided that diversification is a good path to embark upon, what do you think the first steps should be? Well, I would suggest at least doing a basic fundraising health check, and this is a sensible place to start. You can do it internally or ask a consultant for support, depending on the resources available. There is some benefit in asking an outside person to help you because they may bring some fresh perspectives to the situation. So that's what we did at Youth Concern. And I
interrupt there a second. If you haven't already been on the Charity Excellence Framework website, they have really good free resources if you want to do it internally. Really great questionnaires that will give you guidance. So it's a stepping stone between doing it yourself and not being sure you're right, and paying a consultant who you know will get it bang on. It's a good intermediate point.
Brilliant. That sounds like a really good idea. And actually, one of the services I've been offering recently is to support people in doing a basic health check. I think for me, you know, when I would very occasionally be in the position where I could ask for a consultant's help, I had to decipher very quickly whether or not they understood the workings of a small charity. And if you get it wrong, it's a nightmare because they think that your project is the only project you've got to work on. So yes, I think a basic fundraising health check is really useful. And that this should highlight opportunities to focus on growing our community, corporate and individual donor support and other streams of income. So what should it cover? Well, certainly an overview of your recent and current fundraising activities to establish what has worked well and less well. And then you'll want a SWOT analysis conducted in conjunction with key members of your team. This will identify, as you know, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for various fundraising streams. So you can do just one SWOT for your entire fundraising activities, or my preference and recommended course of action would be to do a few. So if, for example, like the majority of you, your main focus is on grant funding, I would do a SWOT analysis on that, and then choose 1 or 2 additional income streams and do a SWOT analysis on those. And some of the factors that are useful to take into consideration include the skills and experience within the team. And by team, I do mean the extended team, so your staff, your volunteers, and your trustees, as well as their capacity. So I've just been doing a bit of work with a London food bank, helping them look at restructuring. And when I looked at what they were doing with their fundraising, there wasn't a huge amount going on, but I found out that one of their trustees runs a film company in London and knows everybody worth knowing, and a lot of people who are very wealthy and can hold very easily huge fundraising events. And she was wanting to do this, and every time she sort of mentioned it to the chair and the manager, they sort of said, oh yes, we'll have a conversation, and it never happened. So I was sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, you're sitting there on, you know, a wealth of connections, networking, and will. You know, there are a lot of people who've been sitting during COVID and furlough thinking, what can I do to help? And they may not be able to sponsor your organisation or charity, but they might be able to speak to somebody who speaks to somebody and they get a film made or raise a lot of money. So I think it's really important just to check to see whether you've been missing out on a little gem within your team. Next is return on investment. And again, to start with, when I started Diversifying and we did some community events, you know, I put on several events that took forever to organise, didn't necessarily play to my strengths because that time I didn't have any admin. And it was a great bash to get together, but we ended up raising a couple of £100. And, you know, if the aim is to raise visibility, wonderful. If the aim is to, you know, give your supporters a feel-good feeling to go away with, then amazing. But as a fundraiser in itself, if my top objective was to raise funds, that did not make sense on ROI, return on investment. So once you've decided which stream of income to explore, just take a look at those sums really. You know, obviously you only be able to work with estimates, but there's a lot of research that's gone on, and you can get ideas from other charities who've tried it themselves. Past and current success rate I referred to, that's important. It might be that pre your time, they might have had a really good network of businesses that were supporting them. You never know kind of what's been going on previously. Then look at your supporter base and networks. So initially, when we were looking at individual donors, I didn't feel that we had well, we had very few supporters. We'd been doing very little in terms of communications, so there wouldn't have really been many people to go out there and do an appeal to. So see whether that's something that you've got already or whether it's something you need to build for the particular funding stream. Next, marketing materials, including and especially digital communications, you know, these days. Usually free, instant communication can build up rapport, and some of those followers that you're having conversations with really can turn into volunteers, supporters, donors down the line. You know, we had an example of a couple who I'd started engaging with on social media, And down the line, the husband offered to come and do some free photography for some of our events. And then a couple of months later, they came in with a cheque for £3,200. I mean, we'd never had a gift over probably 100. So, you know, it was a key turning point, actually. So
and again, I'm going to interrupt again, Fran. I know some of you were at it last week, but very shortly on our LinkedIn and various places, we'll post a video of Vicky White from White Communications session on building your social media presence. So if you weren't there last week, do make sure you click on them and have a watch of that. I sent you the link today, so it should be up shortly.
Wonderful, wonderful, thank you. So, I mean, the time that we got really serious about diversification was 4 years ago, 2016, when I turned our dream of setting up a homeless supported accommodation project into a strategic objective or target with the approval of the trustees, and that was very scary. We were a £200,000 charity and we needed to raise £1 million. Yes, it was initially quite overwhelming, and you know, I knew that relying on grant funding as we had until that point just wasn't going to cut it. I knew that funders would be cautious to put their money into a startup, especially as we had never previously run a residential project and we didn't have the financial plan that they were wanting to see for the next 3 years. It was kind of a catch-22 because they'd say to me, you know, how are you going to fund it for the next 3 years? And I'd be thinking, well, if you give me the grant I'm applying for 150,000 over 3 years, you're going to help me there, aren't you? And then other funders will come on board. But hey, I knew, you know, people were going to be cautious. And we also didn't have, of course, being a new project, we couldn't evidence the outcomes. So we needed a shift out of our comfort zone fast. Well, by me saying we, me really. So with the board, we considered a number of additional funding streams, including setting up a social enterprise arm, which I think they may well do in a year or two's time, corporate support, crowdfunding, individual giving, and community fundraising, which, as I mentioned, we were already tinkering with. So after we'd done our initial bit of exploration, a key funding stream that we wanted to explore further was corporate support. And so I'd like to just explain to you the very basic SWOT analysis I did to explore corporate fundraising as an option to diversify. So under the strengths, I identified that because we were a local project benefiting local vulnerable young people, I could talk about the local benefit. And I knew that businesses would be interested in what the benefit was to them. Secondly, we were good at building relationships. Third, we had a new project that we were going to be shouting about, excited about, with clear outcomes. We knew what the change was that we were hoping to deliver. And we had lots of stories from our young people talking about how, you know, what had happened to them without this project, and also how their lives had changed when they'd had our consistent support. And also, finally, a strength was that at the time, homelessness was starting to become much more of a national priority. There was more focus on it nationally. In terms of our weaknesses, as I mentioned, we had almost no supporter base. There was a definite lack of visibility, although I thought we were well known for what we did. Really, it was only amongst people that we had had direct physical contact with. We hadn't embarked upon or embraced our digital journey. And thirdly, we had a lack of fundraising resource. You know, when we discussed the possibility of hiring a fundraiser, that subject was hushed quite quickly because we realised that we didn't really have the funds. And finally, a weakness was that we had no track record in residential services. In terms of the opportunities, you know, it was an amazing opportunity to raise awareness, both of the charity and the services we were offering, but also of the issues around vulnerable and disadvantaged young people. Secondly, it was an opportunity to build new relationships and really galvanise community support. I used the strapline, just to see if I can remember, a community response to a community issue. So I wanted anybody that kind of came in contact with any of our communications or got involved to realise what an important role they were playing in solving the problem. And another opportunity was to look creatively at what corporate support would be useful. So not purely, we did set up a corporate supporter scheme with packages, but there were other areas where corporates could help us. The threats, a lot of what ifs. What if the project didn't go ahead? What if we don't raise enough funding? What if we don't offer the corporates the benefits that they're looking for? And what if we don't look after those new supporters well enough? So I don't know whether we have 5 minutes now or whether we shouldn't, Karen. It's 10:02 and I would say I'll probably have another 5-10 minutes. Should we not, or shall we?
No.
Let's
mosey on for the moment. We can always come back at the end, can't we?
Okay. So I was going to ask you, but it would be good to do it outside of this session if we don't get it time now. It would just be great if you, off the top of your heads, picked one new fundraising stream that you can think of, and then just off the top of your head, list a few strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Okay, so back to my youth concern diversification journey, and you might like to know what happened next. So it took us 4 years, but we did in fact raise the 1 million. And I'm delighted to say that the Next Step project, as I called it, is due to open in October, despite coronavirus, and it will provide supported accommodation for up to a year for 9 vulnerable, homeless young people at a time. So corporate support became key. Donations, yes. I mentioned our corporate supporters packages, but more importantly, actually, in-kind support, which after all our communications and raising our visibility, reaching out to people, meant that we managed to get pro bono legal support for the entirety of dealing with the contracts and the landlord, who's in fact what happened was that one of our funders bought the building for us for £640,000 and allowing us to use it for a peppercorn rent for 3 years. So that was incredible. So that was an example of a kind of corporate really, who funded us, yes, but gave us something much more valuable. We had a hotel chain. I invited one of the partners to our corporate supporters evening, and he ended up offering to furnish the whole project and to ask his 8 managers to source anything that they didn't have within their hotels for us. We also got pro bono architect services for all the plans, which saved us thousands. Free storage. There were a lot of things that came as a result of us reaching out to businesses. And also, amazingly, businesses started raising funds for us. Let me explain. I came up with an idea probably 3 years ago to set up something called a business fundraising action group. So I realised that there was a lot of potential goodwill out there, but that not all businesses were able to sponsor us. And so I went initially to the lowest hanging fruit. I've been taught that only recently. Go for the lowest hanging fruit. So those people that we had contacts with and good relationships, and asked them if they'd join my business fundraising action group. And I also reached out to some of the winners of the Bucks Business First Business of the Year Awards to invite them to our corporate supporters event and tell them about our work, and in particular the new project. And so I ended up with 8 business people. And so the way it worked was that we'd meet monthly, and initially I asked them all to come up with fundraising ideas to bring to the meeting. And then I was looking at the return on investment side of things. And when one of the members suggested a sponsored walk, but that he would organise it, I mean, this was amazing. I didn't intend it just to be a talking shop. That's why I put the word action in it. And the first event they ran, we had 184 people turned up. We raised £10,000. And in addition to that, of course, vitally, we built our supporter base. We finally had somebody to send our MailChimp newsletters to, and people who were starting to get interested and excited about the project, so we could bring them along our journey with us. And this is something you can easily replicate. I'm happy to have a chat with anybody outside of this if you want a few pointers. So we, through that means and others, we gradually built up our supporter base, in particular through social media. So yes, as Karen said, do look at that, because we found if you put your time and effort, no matter how little, in the right places, it can really reap rewards. And I know I've had lots of people, Karen, you said people say I'm amazing. I've had a few people say, oh, the work you do at Youth Concern is amazing. And I think, oh, where have I met you? And I find out they've just seen a couple of posts on LinkedIn. And I think that what happens is it's like a drip effect, you know, it becomes more familiar. And I don't know, perhaps people feel they know the work possibly more than they do. But anyway, it really did. It took a while, and I spent quite a lot of time building up my LinkedIn followers. I think up to about, I think I aimed for 1,000 first of all, but built it up to about 3,000. Got to the point where if I was needing something, I could put out a message and say, SOS, can anybody help me with X, Y, or Z? And within the day, I'd have kind of 10 people replying, either suggesting somebody else or offering to help, which is amazing. It's like extending your team beyond your real team, you know, which as a small charity is invaluable. So we also had, we did a set up corporate supporters events. I cheekily asked the MP, David Lidington, who was the Deputy Prime Minister at the time, to speak at our first event, and he agreed. I'd been visiting him a bit to kind of groom him, is probably the wrong word, but tell him about the work we were doing. And also I persuaded the Bucks Herald to decide that they needed a Christmas charity, and they agreed to do 3, I think they did double spreads of us over the Christmas period. And it was only at that point that I realised that the donate button on our website actually worked. I thought it was just a pretty picture before then. So we also, I talked on radio interviews at schools and colleges, and also I went and presented at national conferences, including Third Sector Fundraising Conference, Charity Comms Conference, and where else was I? Rothschild held a homelessness conference. I spoke there as well. So the aim was to focus on raising our visibility and getting the word out. And as I said, in time, our efforts started paying off and the momentum started kicking in. The MP agreed to be our ambassador. The Mayor chose us as his Charity of the Year, raised lots of money, and our business fundraising action group, you know, was something I wish I'd thought of 10 years previous. And then when it came to being offered the opportunity to do a crowdfunder, now that we'd built up that supporter base, this was a crowdfunder in collaboration with the council, I knew we had a better chance at getting some funding via those means. And sure enough, but not without a great deal of work, especially from my amazing exec support, we did meet our target. If you don't meet the target, you don't keep the money. So there was quite a lot of pressure there. So I was asking myself, as we finish off, what key tips I could share with you all when you're looking to focus more on diversification. So here are, I think I've got 5. The first is create a compelling campaign. So important. Don't just ask to fund what you've been doing. If that's what you need the money for, that's fine, but dress it up. You can call it a project, or you just need to package it in a way that, you know, people can clearly see the need, the gap in services, the solution, and how your interventions are going to provide that solution. So what worked so well for me, this is the same point, creating a compelling campaign, was that I could clearly describe the gap in services. You know, we had lots of young homeless people coming to us, nowhere to put them. And we had case studies to show both the pain points, and we were able to show that we understood this client group. They were the young people we'd been working with for years. And we could show that we could deliver positive outcomes about their journeys. And we actually, some of our young people were keen to speak. And anybody that's been to our AGMs, not mine anymore, I shouldn't say our, but Youth Concerns AGMs in the past, we always had young people talking and they wanted to share their journeys. We also used video to bring their stories to life. And I must say, investing in a 3-minute video, and there's a brilliant videographer I know who worked for us called Lawrence Fernando, very, very reasonable. If you're interested in making yourselves a little video, I must say, when we had a video done, every time I did my spiel and then showed the video to a business, I can't remember one instance where people didn't want to support us in some way. So, you want to be able to capture hearts and minds. Secondly, and we've alluded to it here, incorporate the voices of your beneficiaries, however is appropriate. We used our clients to speak. We had a couple of youth ambassadors, but that isn't suitable for everybody. We did have a couple of instances where a young person was very keen to share their story in the paper, but then she suffered a backlash from her family who were very critical. And so, we became a lot more cautious and about exploring potential safeguarding issues and privacy issues. If you can find a way, you can even anonymize case studies. You can put a picture of somebody else there. Really important. Facts and figures by themselves don't really add the flesh to the bones and aren't emotive enough, I think, to get people to say, I really want to support you. Thirdly, reach out and build relationships. There are people who want to support what you're doing. There are definitely more people out there than you've found so far. And these people will support you once they understand what the problem is that you're trying to solve and how you can provide the solution. Let them know how they can be part of that solution. Gone are the days where you can approach individuals or businesses with your begging bowls and just ask them to help. So ask yourself what the prospective donors and supporters want out of that relationship. You can ask them directly if you want to, or you can dig a bit discreetly and give it to them. Is it to come and visit the project and meet the CEO? For some people, that's what they really wanted. They wanted to hear me talk about the project and see what was going on. For other people, they wanted a picture in the press. They wanted some positive PR. They wanted to be seen to be doing their community social responsibility. That's the one, isn't it? Corporate social responsibility. Or is it just that they want a warm, fuzzy feeling inside? And there are still some people who really just want to know that they've done something good. So number 4, my 4th tip is be innovative and resourceful. This is the best time to start being brave and bold. Don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. All you need to do is invest a tiny amount of resource or money into trying something new. And you can use the famous method, test, learn, and tweak. What are you going to lose? And of course, embracing the digital journey and buying in support to do that, if you need to, will help you along the journey. My 5th tip is, and I don't know who said it, but I found it to be true, is that it's mindset, I'm afraid. And 80% of the work for me certainly was internal. You might be surprised to hear that, but I know that is the truth. When I thought about my £1 million target, it just seemed overwhelming. Sometimes it would be quite upsetting because I'd put my public message out there that this is what I was going to do. And I did not want to let down the young people or the charity or our reputation. And I felt under pressure. But I had no idea how I was going to raise that £1 million. It just seemed like a crazy, unrealistic, unachievable goal. So what I then realised was that I had to start taking really good care of me. And it wasn't something I had ever given any thought before. But I realised in 2016 that I was nearing burnout. I had a lot of responsibilities in and outside of work. But anyway, so I needed to start taking really good care of my body and mind. And I needed to celebrate my successes. Yes, even the little ones. Otherwise, the journey becomes really depressing. And I needed to be kind to myself, listening to that inner critical voice and replacing it with positive affirmations. You know, I would tell myself, I can do this. It's okay. I am good enough. I will get there in the end. And I also needed to break that huge task into manageable chunks and just focus on that chunk. I would remind myself that I knew what my desired destination was, and I frequently imagined that completed supported accommodation project running and the young people benefiting from it. That really helped my motivation. And I trusted that if I took small steps each day, then towards that end goal, I couldn't fail to succeed. So I do hope you've gleaned something from today's session and that you can see that there's a real opportunity and a necessity now to come out of this pandemic stronger and more resilient, and that by diversifying your funding streams, you can take on a new tool in your toolkit to emerge not only surviving, but thriving. And just a final thought, which was that as I was preparing for today, I wanted to think about some way I could support you all further. So I'd love to offer you all a 30% discount, anybody who's attended today, for support with a fundraising health check. So if any of you would like to find out more about that, I'd be delighted to have a chat, or I can email you some info. And I think you've got my details because Karen copied me into an email this morning. So I just want to thank you for your time. And Karen, thank you so much for your wonderful technical and logistical support. It's brilliant. Takes away those stresses. And I just wonder, guys, if you could share perhaps one takeaway from today's session, please. And also, if we have a few minutes, I'm very happy to take any questions. But Karen, I think you're going to explain how to share their takeaways, please.
It's very technical. If you want to pop into chat, your key
Oh,
takeaway from today is we did debate doing something more complex and realised that that's just the easiest way of doing it. And as always, of course, if you do need to leave, because it is just after 2 o'clock.
Sorry, I've run over 5 minutes.
But if you've got any questions, then please do ask. But it'd be great to know what your takeaways are. And if you want to share them verbally, you're welcome to do that as well.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you. It sort of helps me as well because it's a little bit different doing a Zoom session because you can't really gauge from your audience, you know, whether you've pitched, how well you've pitched it.
Dorothy says to not forget to take care of body and mind, focus on manageable chunks.
Great.
And a huge task. Yeah, I think that was probably mine as well. Sarah's corporate action was a great idea. Yes, I totally agree.
Great.
Carrying out a fundraising review, including return on investment. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you very much for your feedback. Do any of you have any questions? Oh, thank you, Debbie. That's kind of you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Hope you're leaving fired up. What new fundraising streams might you consider?
I think for us, it's definitely going down the corporate sponsorship route, and you know, both in terms of funding, but also pro bono support with projects is fantastic. Yeah, apologies for my distracting children during the
Okay, that's fine. Well, if you want to have a chat about that, I'd be happy to link up.
Okay, thank you.
I think, Sarah, you've said a couple of times the need to address legacy is a big one for the Puzzle Centre.
Yes, sorry, it's really, I can't comment on legacy because I don't have any experience of it. But I'm wondering whether a good place to look would be the FSI Now, I always forget what that stands for. Can somebody help me? It is Foundation of Social Improvement. They have a lot of free courses on fundraising, and I wouldn't be surprised if they have one on legacy. And they're like £15 or free.
I know there's also a funeral home actually in Aylesbury. It's a new one. They've set up in the, I think it's the town square area, that are, and of course it's for their own benefit, but they are happy to speak to charities about how you set up legacies and how you promote and everything else. So I know the person I can ask about that. She mentioned it to me once. I'm happy, Sarah, if you want me to ask that
That'd be great.
Can't remember.
Obviously, it's a little bit inappropriate at the moment, obviously with COVID, but it is something that we are a little woefully behind a lot of charities on.
Yes. So yes, anybody that would like a chat, I'm happy to have a chat with anybody if you want to explore anything more deeply. But yeah, I wish you all luck. And you know, small charities are kind of the backbone of this country, aren't they? It's vital that you all are able to continue delivering your vital services.
Absolutely. Yes, and I would say the same thing, you know, as Fran. If you think the Clare Foundation can support you in any way, then do please, you know, shout. I know, Melinda, I think you said you're looking at the, I'm going to say it's the bid writing support program. I think it was you who said that you're looking at that. And that's fantastic. Our very first program has been approved for the program, first charity for the bid writing support program just this morning, in fact, which is fantastic. So do feel free to shout to us, you know, if there's something we can do, we'll help you. And if we can't, we'll more than happily point you in the right direction if we know what direction that is. And Fran is one of the directions that we point people in. So yeah, so thank you very much.
Quick question. You've put on the website that the deadline's tomorrow, but is that midday or the end of the day?
Don't worry about that. I've removed that from it. What